All right, cool guys. Look, we want to again thank you for your participation. This part is going to be somewhat interactive. We're going to be having conversation with the panelists. I'm going to ask them in a minute, quick minute to introduce themselves. But these are folks that you want to soak in all the information that they get. All right. And at the same time, I want you guys to think of some questions because I am going to come to the audience to give you an opportunity to ask. These aren't one of those moments in life where you be shy. These are the moments where you got us all in a room. I'm gonna tell you right now, people pay a lot of money to be in these kind of atmospheres. The university and my organization, we funded the bill so y'all could be here. And so what I'm asking is that maximize that time, all right? So we're gonna start, if y'all can just introduce yourselves and your level of expertise or your specific domain, and then we're gonna kind of get into some of the questions. I'll kind of lay out at least the framework, but if we can introduce yourselves, that'd be great. We'll start with you and go this way up.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Mark Simmons. I've been in the industry, the financial industry, for about 10 years now. I specialize in mutual funds and life insurance. So we're going to be talking to you guys a little bit about that today. Hopefully, you guys have a lot of questions.
Awesome. I'm Isaac Hebron. On Instagram, you can find me as investor_Ike. I have a 9-to-5 job as assistant principal of a school, elementary school, K to 6. Been doing that for 10 years. But then why I'm really here to talk to you about real estate. I own 53 units, 53 doors, 35 houses. This year I've bought 20 doors, and I've just been really doing it for the past 10 years. I'm 36, so right out of college. About 26 to 36, I've been acquiring properties and building cash flow assets.
That's amazing. I'm Ricky Taylor. I am your 401k consultant. Everything under the retirement plan umbrella. So those of you, when you go into the workforce and the company offers you a 401k, my suggestion, get involved. I've been in the industry now for 22 years.
That's the age of some of y'all. Come on, let's give a round of applause. We got a lot of years of experience. All right, look, let's get into it. I'm gonna tell you right now, and it's interesting that the backdrop is that we're in a university. But debt is one of those things that's been killing our hood for a long time. And one of the things that I want to call out, because we were told growing up that the only key to success was get an education, which I'm all for, but student loan debt is a real problem. Is anybody here dealing with student loan debt? Some of y'all in college, but how many people are still dealing with it? You don't remember a course you took. You don't remember the last class you took, but you remember that you got that bill. So here's my question. Here's my question for y'all, and in all honesty, because we need answers. For people who are trying to build wealth, but have a lot of debt, specifically student loan debt, how do they navigate through that? And where do we, how do we get our hands around that?
Gotcha. Anyone? Well, hello, everyone. All right. how you guys feel about your student loan debt?
No one has it? No one has student loan debt?
Anybody? Okay. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. 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 Gotcha. So that's a great point of view to come from, because how many of you guys can relate to that, by the way? That feeling of anguish that you have, right? So the first thing you got to understand is that debt is something that's not supposed to be here, especially student loan debt. That's something that's supposed to weigh us down that long. So we got to have an end in mind with that. So what I would do if I was you, I would take that debt, I would look at it, and I would see what I can do based on the income that I'm making right now, right? And then obviously you have a partner. How you doing, brother? And what we're going to do is we're going to tackle this thing. We got to have a debt elimination date, okay? A debt freedom date. We got to have a game plan, right? See, nothing gets better with neglect. Would you guys agree with me on that? So most people, would you guys agree, most people neglect these type of things? And shout out to Joe. I mean, we got the team here, and this is what we're here to help you guys with. But get that debt together. Get your husband. What you want to do is you want to sit down and understand, okay, we need to understand what we need to do with this thing, right? We can't go back in time, but what we can do is take care of what we're doing right now. So with the income that we're making right now, how can we get rid of this debt completely and then take care of everything else that's going along with it? Whether it's student loan debt, credit card debt, because all of these things are anchors in our lives. So we got to really hone in on what it is that we got to do to take care of it financially, right? So what my recommendation would be on that is get yourself a financial planner. If you're not savvy enough, get yourself somebody that's a financial advisor. That's why we're here, right? And we can educate you guys, right? It's like, for example, when I sit down with someone that's in a similar situation with you, we do these things for free. It's called the financial needs analysis. It shows you the roadmap, is the GPS that shows you exactly what you need to do to get from point A to point B, right? Everybody's financial situations are different, okay? But what we need to do is we need to sit down with you and see exactly where you are and help you get to where you're going to go, right? Because everybody in here, our situations are different, but we need to understand where we are and where we're trying to get to.
And what you just said too about everybody's situation is different. I talk to a lot of freshmen in here, right? There's good debt and then there's bad debt. My student loan debt got me to become a teacher. My student loan debt got me to become an assistant principal and a principal in the school. So actually, my student loan debt is actually good debt for me. And I think that's what it really talks about a lot of you. A lot of you are doing, sports management, kinesiology, art people out there, economics, biology I talked about out there too. So you really want to make sure you're investing in the right education now, because what you don't want to do is all of a sudden get a degree that you do not use. I am in real estate. You do not need a degree for real estate. Although I do have my real estate license, you don't even need a degree for that. So make sure, all you freshmen out there, juniors, sophomores, that you're in the right field for you, because otherwise, the good debt that I have, that I look at student loan, could turn into bad debt if you're not using the right degree and taking out the right loans for those different steps.
Yeah, you know what? I would actually expound on what the sister said. She already has her debt. She graduated. You guys are still in school. If you don't need it, don't take it. Yeah. Okay? So, for instance, if you're offered $10,000 but your tuition bill is $7,000, what you going to do with the other $3,000? Don't take that, because that's not free money. You're going to have to pay that back. So, like she said, nobody talked to you about what to use it for or when to use it. Talk with your guidance counselor. Talk to the admissions or the registrar, I think it is. Have that conversation, asking them what exactly do I need, so you don't have to take more than you actually need.
So that's actually a good segue, and I appreciate it. I think the big thing, number one, is make sure you have a plan, and that's not just for you, for everybody. There are different strategies to eliminate debt, all right? But I like what you said in terms of, like, there are some people who already did their debt. There are those who are in school now. But I'm also thinking about the future generations, because we still could have done a better job in teaching us how to do college. Like, no one told us about not taking the full money. We thought it was easy money. No one told us, we always frowned on community colleges for the first two. Like, if you went to community college, that means you couldn't hack college. That was the myth that was said. We spent a lot of money on private schools and not going to cost-effective schools. So here's a question, like, how do we make sure the next generation, our kids, don't deal with the student loan crisis that we have? Because in America, there's about $1 trillion in student loan debt out there for us. So even what Uncle Joe did for us, and matter of fact, he's actually taken back some. A lot of y'all ain't gonna be covered, all right? But with that being said, on a serious note, how do we make sure the next generation doesn't suffer with student loan debt the way our generation did?
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna take that one, and it is about fiscal education, financial management. Like right now, as Isaac mentioned, he's on Instagram. He's giving you tools and complete education on Instagram. We're in the social media world. Everybody's putting content out. Pay attention to that content. And here's the key thing. If you don't understand something, you have resources so you can go and ask the questions, all right? So in my opinion, and this is what I tell my mentees, ask a lot of questions, do your research, understand what you're getting involved in. You should understand what a checking account is, what a savings account is, what a CD is, before you graduate college. Ask as many questions as possible so you can educate yourself.
Yeah, and there are instruments out there for us to take advantage of, such as 529 plans and things like that, Coverdell, right? You can go out there and do your own research on it. Guys, we're in the age of information right now, right? We could take advantage of the internet. Like Ike was just talking about, guys, go on social media, Instagram. Like, you guys can follow Joe, you follow myself. Like, you could get this information out there. It's free, okay? And then ask your parents about it. You guys can start 529 plans with $50, $100 a month, right? So we got to really, really go out there and seek this information right now. Because back in the day, our parents, our grandparents, they didn't have the information, but we do. So we can capitalize right now on making sure we go into our kids' kids, go in building wealth and things like that. So write that stuff down. What is a 529 plan, right? What is a Coverdell? And go do your research on that stuff and see what you can do with it, right? And go out there and start building your funds for your children and your children's children. Now, you guys don't have children yet. Don't worry about it, but still get the information, right? Go out there and get that information so when you start having your families and you graduate and you're getting married and things like that, you can start a new generation in your family.
Awesome, good stuff. Does this make sense? All right, cool. So student loan debt is part of it. I don't want to keep beating that debt because while it's a big part, it's not the only part we struggle with. I think the other area that we really struggle with in our community is consumerism, right? We borrow money so we could buy liabilities. And Ike, you could appreciate as a real estate guy who knows assets. And so I guess because we live in an economy, guys, that's such a consumer-driven economy, we'll borrow money to buy Gucci, Louis Vuitton, the latest car, more status symbols. I guess my question for you guys is, what should our relationship be with consumer debt from your point of view?
You know, like I said, once again, me and Joe have different philosophies. All of us have different philosophies too about how we utilize our debt. But I think it's really understanding how you're doing the balance of investing and also using your consumer debt. You know, I buy myself Express suits, only $200, no Gucci, Joe, no Louis Vuitton or anything like that. I try to buy those assets to make me the money to be able to buy the things that I want instead of me going in credit card debt. Credit card debt is extremely high. You are all right here. All of you probably have credit cards right now. Start to work on that today. Your credit score is going to be the most important thing for you once you get out of school and you try to go buy a car. My nephew called me yesterday and asked me to co-sign on a car for him the other day because he wasn't thinking about his credit when he was in school. He was swiping it, buying himself clothes. His credit score dropped down. Now he needs me as a co-signer. I would never ever be a co-signer for him on those loans. So just continue to think about that. What you need and what you want, right? I think that's a very important thing. What you need and what you want. You're going to have to use your credit at certain times in life. I have a significant amount of credit that I use because I need to use it to build my real estate portfolio that I have. But it's a need versus a want. So just make sure you think about that as you're thinking about credit.
Yeah, actually, that's something I wrote down for this conversation. Needs versus wants. Having certain levels of debt is important, but you really, like Ike said, you got to pay attention to that. Utilize that Credit Karma. It's a free app. Put your information in, and that way you can kind of keep track of what's going on because credit is important to get a job. Did you know that? A lot of companies look at your credit score to determine if you're worthy of being hired. So that's very important. Of course, getting a car, getting a house. I mean, nobody's probably thinking about a house right now, but in about 5 years, that's going to be an important factor. So, like Ike said, pay attention to the debt, pay attention to good debt versus bad debt. And there's a whole list of what's good and what's bad. Credit cards, bad debt. Mortgages, good debt. Okay, so again, research that, ask questions. Your professor back there, he's got a lot of answers. He knows a lot of people. He can put you in touch with anybody to help you get these answers.
Show of hands, who does not have credit? Who does not have a credit card? Great. Good.
Look at y'all.
No, actually. So this is where we go. This is where we go. See? That's bad. That's bad.
So let me just interject. Because this is the problem that I have. And this is a good debate. Here's the reality. When I was introduced to credit cards, you know what they told me? Take this free t-shirt. Here's free money. Go use. PSECU, exactly. So it's exactly right. And they had that table booth up front. Nobody taught us about credit cards, man. Nobody's giving us knowledge on building credit.
Right.
They're just giving us a credit card saying use it and have fun. And so for someone who never had a job, who's now working, making minimum wage, giving tour guides at my university, and now I got $1,000, bro, I'm enjoying it. And so my problem with that is that we have a poor relationship with it because no one taught us. I'm okay with leveraging it to build credit so you can get real estate and get an asset. I'm all for that. What I'm not for, what is happening to our communities, and specifically I want to call out payday loans because that's another example. Payday loans is where they come into our communities, they offer you cash, but they're telling you it's going to be 1,500% interest. That's criminal. And they specifically go in African American communities where they know we need the money because we got to feed our kids. This is what is not. This is what needs to be taught in our university. That's why I'm glad Professor Figley is doing this, is because we need to have that conversation. And I think that's the part where you will see me get passionate about this. You know, excuse me, let my, you know, that's my passion talking. In the words of Hope.
Let it out, Joe.
But no, but on a serious note, I do think. And so I guess my question that I want to ask to you, Mark, is
Okay.
what is the right amount of debt that we should be having?
The right amount of debt, it depends on the person. Once you get into a situation, if we're going out there, everybody's situation is relative, right? Like you guys have two different philosophies on what debt is. But I understand where you're coming from, I understand where you're coming from, right? So when it comes to debt, we got to understand first and foremost, before we get into debt, what is our goal? It goes back to what is the main goal? What are we doing, right? What are we going to college for, right? What is our overall outlook? What do we want out of life? And then once you go into that point, then you can break down what your goals are, right? What is the debt that we're going to have once we graduate from college, if that's a goal for you, right? We're going to buy a home if that's a goal for you, right? That's something that's a priority for that person, right? So like everybody's situations are different. So I really don't want to throw on what's a good amount, right? I really don't want to be in debt, but I understand that in order for me to provide a certain lifestyle for the family I have, my debt is going to be a certain amount, right? So understand, again, it goes all the way back to what do I want? That's really what debt is, right? Debt is what do I want? Because some people, they can go through life, if you listen to Dave Ramsey, he doesn't believe in debt, right? But then there's other people that do believe in debt. So again, everything's going to be relative, guys, to what you want to do, what you want out of your life. Once you understand what you want, then you break down what's good debt to you from that perspective.
Any questions so far? I just want to make sure I'm capturing. Yeah. Yeah, so let me answer that question. So understand, like when you go to try to get a home, they're going to look at your credit score.
Right.
And the only determining factor of your credit score is your relationship with debt. Now, here's the interesting dynamic. They don't want you having a lot of credit cards that are overly utilized. So hypothetically, if you have a credit card with $5,000 and you use $4,000, they don't like that. They rather you in that like 2 to 9% utilization rate and making sure you're paying it on time. So there's mechanisms you got to think of. And so when I say how much debt you should have, I mean, I'm being provocative a little bit asking them, but the point that is that your goal should not to be spending money you don't have. That's never a position you want to be in. However, having a credit card and using it responsibly, where you make sure the payments are taken care of, so you're not paying on the interest, because they're charging you 26%, that's the average now, especially in the market that we're in, because that kind of stuff is going to hold you back. You want to put your money in assets that's going to actually make you money, not let the banks make money off you, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question? All right, awesome. So I want to hear from the audience. I'm going to respond to that real quick. Lauryn Hill said it's not always what you cop, it's what you keep. And so the problem is a lot of times when our incomes go up, our expenses follow. And so there's not really that gap that you need to make a dent. And so the key is always making sure that you could manage your expenses. Now, when you double click on it, a lot of times we try to treat ourselves, right? Because, oh, you know what, I deserve this, and I deserve this. And we kind of take I'm not saying this is you, we kind of take that selfish mindset, like, oh, well, I make, 6 figs, I should be living in Manhattan. When the reality is, if you're thinking wealth, right, a lot of wealthy people are frugal. They keep their expenses low. And so when they're increasing, they're investing more. The investing rates are a lot higher in other communities, not ours. And so I think that's where you have to, like I always tell people, and this is why even what Mark brought up, you got to put a budget in place. And all a budget is really your vision on paper. Like, where are you and your husband trying to go to? Once you put that down and jot it down, and then you ask yourself, do we really need this? When you start, like I'm telling you, and me and my wife, she can attest to this, when we look at our budget, we realize sometimes, we spending way too much money on restaurants. Starbucks. Instead of buying coffee, buy a Starbucks stock. Become an owner in that joint, so that when everybody's buying coffee, you're making money off it. That's the ownership mindset shifts happen. So I know I'm giving you a long, answer to your question, but I think the key is just make sure you get on a budget. Make sure you can widen that gap between what you make and the expenses. And a lot of times it's the debt. That's why we got to put that debt strategy in place so we can give us the cushion that we need to make wealth.
Joe, that's accurate, and it's going back to needs versus wants, right? And when you look at your paycheck, I was explaining this to my son. I said, dude, you live at home, but he's got a full-time job. He had like $200 in his bank account. And I said, I immediately got pissed off. And I said, I need to see your last 3 pay stubs. He sent them to me. The boy made over $7,000, okay, net, meaning he brought that home. And I said, why do you only have $200 in your bank account? He couldn't explain it. So what I said to him was, all right, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to force you to save. So now I take 50% of his money. Every time he gets paid, I take 50%, and he lives and has fun with the other 50%. That's the same thing we have to do as adults as well, all right? We have to, like we're talking about, the budget. Look at how much you're bringing in and just take a percentage. Save it. Put it in savings. And again, live off of what you have available in that needs versus wants category. That's how you're going to start to build your wealth, your equity, have extra money. So if the car breaks down, $3,000, you got that. If you want to take a vacation, a couple $1,000s, you got that. But it's a sacrifice. That's the biggest thing that we have to get over, is sacrificing the savings aspect of our money.
And I'm not a financial advisor, so please do your research. And you have an amazing professor over here. But I did see a lot of hands go up about not having credit history. I would tell you to do your research on what the things are, how it could benefit you, and also listen to Joe about the pitfalls, about how credit could really put you behind, but also how it could really push you forward, especially when you graduate college and you want to get cars and buy houses and do all the other things that money cannot buy, but credit can open up the doors for you. But please do your research, and please talk to your professor.
And to piggyback off of what our situation is here, what I want you to do is, there's a difference between what we're willing to do and what we can do, right? So start hiding money from yourself on something that you're willing to do, right? Not what you can do, right? Because think about it. You said you're mid-30s, right? So we have mid-30s worth of financial history, right? So this habitual, right? Even though you're making this, sometimes our habits are still here, right? So it's going to take time for that to catch up. So start doing the things, little things, right? Hide $20 from yourself, right? In a different account, right? Open a different bank and like, don't even get a card to it. Just hide it from yourself, like in a money market account or something like that, where you can't see it, you can't physically touch it because it's tempting, right? To go, oh, let me get this. I deserve it. Going back to that, what Joe was talking about, right? I deserve to get those shoes. I deserve to get my nails done, right? And I still want you to do all of that stuff that you like to do. However, start disciplining yourself. Like, you know what? I'm gonna hide $50 for myself every check, $30, whatever it is, whatever you're comfortable with. Start hiding that from yourself and watch that stuff compound out, and then it becomes a habit for you. And over time, you can do that with another area of your life.
Good stuff. Hold on. Oh, I saw a question here, and I'm going to come back to you. You got a question?
I just wanted to say something about debt, because I just got financially debt free. I had to get
Let's clap for that. Let's clap for that. That's major. That's major.
it took me 3 years to pay it off. And the only thing I can say to y'all young people is sacrifice. And I have 2 children, so it was a lot having 2 kids and having a teenager, having younger ones. So it's really hard. It's really hard. And I wish that when I was young, I have wonderful teachers, actually. And I have wonderful family members who would help me try to get into the right direction.
Appreciate
stuff,
that.
good
Yeah, we gonna get into that right now. Yo, let me tell you now, that was major. Having a system in place and a community, those two things, literally is what changed my life. A lot of us don't have systems, so I thank you for sharing that, man. I appreciate that. Let me get into this because look, the goal is not just to become debt free. I was $100,000 in debt. I mentioned this time and time again. I'm debt free today. The moment I became debt free, I was still concerned. There was still some angst. The race to zero, like there's a difference between financially independent and debt free. And so I want to spend a little time about how we could build wealth. Now, Ike, I want to start in real estate. You talked about 55 doors at 36. Let's just clap for that because, yo, that doesn't happen in our community. You got a lot of young college folks in here, and some used to be college folks in here. What kind of guidance do you give to somebody who wants to get started? Maybe you don't have that much information, but think of, tap back into your 26-year-old, investor Ike. How does someone get started?
Yeah, I think back, me and Joe went to East Stroudsburg together. That's how we go. We go way back to the East Stroudsburg days. And I remember paying my landlord the money for my rent and paying my landlord the money for my rent and understanding what businesses is he in? What is he doing? And I think back when you said 26, I think I was 24. It was my first year teaching. And I went to a bank and I said, hey, can I buy a house? And the first thing they pulled, Joe, was my credit. When they pulled my credit, we got to kind of see what I was able to do if I was able to purchase a home with my salary. This is a very, Instagram right now tells you not to work, become an entrepreneur, do all that. I talked to you before about how important your W-2 is. A W-2 is so important for you to show your income. Your first year out of college, after your first year, you have your second year of 2 full years of a salary, you're going to be able to purchase some assets that we're talking about. That's what's so exciting about working in the workforce and about coming out of college with a great salary. Then you'll be able to kind of identify what kind of property you could buy. And I really encourage everybody to really look into home ownership a lot earlier. It's starting to become the trend. When we were in college in 2004, 2006, that was not the trend. I didn't know a lot of people that owned homes. My parents were renting. Everybody I know was renting. So I looked into home ownership. FHA, you only have to put 3.5% down on your home. So what does that say? If it's a $200,000 home you're looking at, you have to put down $7,000 plus some closing costs, but about $9,000 to buy a $200,000 home that you would end up paying rent for $2,600, $2,700 and building no equity for yourself. So really think about that. And anybody that's in here right now, same thing. FHA, 3.5% down. You have access to it as long as your credit score is right and you have your W-2s. So that's what I would really start to think, just changing that mindset of home ownership and just start there. I bought a duplex first and then I continued to buy and that's how I ended up with 53 units and 30 some odd doors. I lose count all the time. But that's really what I just want you to start to think about now, no matter what position you're in. If you're 50 years old or you're 15 years old, I see some young gentlemen in here thinking about what you could do to become home ownership and educating yourself, please.
Any questions with real estate?
I don't have that many doors, but I do have a few doors. My problem with the real estate is that I collect the rent, but there's a lot of upkeep.
Yeah, if you're putting your savings right back in that home, your home is the savings account, right? It's the equity. So it's not like you might not have the liquid, but it's going back into the asset. And I think, I sent you a thing saying Jersey City is the most expensive rent in America? So, yeah, that's right? The most expensive rent in America? So I would continue to hold on to those, continue to build those. You know, work with your bankers, call your bank. You might have a lot of equity. I bet you have a lot of equity in your home. I would call a bank to come get an appraisal on your home. That's what I would do, because I bet you have a lot of equity in those homes.
I would say this too, like, whenever, and these are for anyone who doesn't have real estate and trying to get into real estate, before you analyze a deal to see if a deal makes sense, you always have to be thinking about, like, that's the difference between being a landlord, and you know this, and a tenant. For a tenant, your roof breaks, you call your landlord, get it fixed. Windows, yeah, you fix that. Landlord, you always got to think, and we call this maintenance expenses and capex, like, you know, like your capital expenditure. You got to think through both of those things. And what I always tell people is you don't want to wait until an incident happens. You want to start beefing up the savings, right? So you have a cushion. If you are running an investment property business with no cash, you're going to leave yourself very, very vulnerable to things happening, right? And you could find yourself in a pinch, especially this pandemic. And if anyone knows me personally, I was one of the ones crying the most. You know, when the government passes a law that you're not allowed to evict somebody, right? For 2 years. Now all of a sudden, but you still have to pay the property taxes. You see what I'm saying? So it becomes complicated. But the guidance I would say, in addition to what Ike said, is you always want to make sure you have some type of cash flow to think about fixtures, because it's going to happen, to think about emergencies, because it's going to happen, right? These are the things you want to kind of think through.
This isn't exactly like a real estate question, but more like a working slash homeowner question. How, like, do you guys have any, like, tips on how to, like, prepare ourselves financially for, like, let's say, like, our junior, senior year, maybe even sophomore, about, like, maybe, like, starting, like, to have roommates or apartment in the area? Because, like, yeah, living on campus is great, but, like, you want to have your freedom, you know?
Look, nobody's going to ball in their 20s. Let me be very clear, because a lot of people think that when you get a good job out of college, this is the time you really, people who eat poop, and I'm being facetious a little bit, but my point is, when you can look for roommates, like, your goal is to invest in yourself, drastically reduce expenses, pour into, you're the asset, right? Pour into building your asset, but adopt a frugal mindset. One thing about me is, I was making minimum wage in college, and I still keep that minimum wage. Anybody who knows me knows I'm extremely frugal till this day, and God has blessed me. I'm a multimillionaire now, but I still count all my dollars. And so my guidance to you in your 20s, and I tell the same thing to my little brother who's in his 20s, and we talk all the time, is you want to adopt the mindset of sacrifice. This is all about learning right now. Roommates, please do roommates. When you get a job, you should be literally, he talked about a system, 10% to yourself. You need to be pouring more of that to building your acumen, taking some extra courses. Like, don't be scared to pour money into yourself. You do that, plus invest a good portion of your money, that's going to put you in a position to win. All right. I want to switch a little bit gears to retirement, because I think this is something that's important. A lot of us, especially young folks, don't think about when our time is up. What guidance, Ricky, do you give to people who need to start preparing for, like, how should we be thinking about retiring, or, like, at the, you know, when our time is done with work?
It's actually a really good topic, because most of you are really young. You haven't gotten a job yet, okay? When you get that job, they're going to say, well, we have this 401k, and you have to put some of your money in it. And you're going to say, whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean put my money in it? That's money that I don't have that I could normally spend, right? My suggestion, and again, 22 years in, I even did it myself. Put the money in, all right? Defer some of your own salary so that you can start investing, because a lot of times with your company retirement plan, that's the first time you're going to be experiencing actual investing. But here's the other key thing. It's the free money. If the company is matching, that means you have to put in some of your own money, and then they'll match it free of charge, and then maybe even some extra money called the profit sharing. So my suggestion is always one, like I said about my son. If you're living at home, put as much money as you can into that retirement account. Keep doing that year after year after year until you actually step out on your own. Now it's time to start working that budget. Okay? The key thing is put it away while you don't need it. All right? So Joe's saying, well, what are we talking about in terms of retirement plan or retirement? You're probably going to work 40, 50, some of us maybe even 60 years, right? But you don't want to be in year 50 and say, oh man, I forgot to set up my retirement. I didn't put any money away. Now you're going to have to work until you're 70, 80, maybe even 90 because you don't have any money, all right? So the key thing is setting yourself up for the long game, okay? In your, again, 50s and 60s. Does that make sense? Okay.
I'm 36 right now, and I've been, I have a 403B, which is very similar to a 401k, invested in that. I also have a pension, and I also have my real estate properties. And I have always, my wife I get on her nerves all the time because I'm talking about retirement in the next 10 years. I'm retiring at 46, and I'm trying to shrink it down, but I keep thinking about the plans that we set into place so young at the age of 22, 23 years old, and how the compound interest works. Joe is in the real estate. I have him in my phone as Joe ESU Stocks. So it's just how important that those are because you never know what your number is. It might be 65, and it starts getting down lower and lower, and you get to live that life that you want to live when you start to think about it right now.
So that's another good point, guys, especially for the young folks. Retirement is not, it's not an age. It's a number. Did y'all catch that? Let me say it again. It's not an age, it's a number. If you're depending on Social Security to take care of your retirement, you're not retiring.
Right.
You'll work. If you're waiting for a pension, he's lucky, right? He works for a public school system. That's probably the last. Everyone used to have a pension. They don't do those no more. You guys know what a 401k is? Maybe, Rick, you want to help them understand what a 401k is?
I would love to help them understand it. So a 401k is a retirement account sponsored by a company. You have to have a company in order to have a 401k. And essentially there's a couple of different money sources. Let's talk about a deferral. The deferral is the money coming out of your paycheck. Either it's going to be on a pre-tax basis or a Roth basis. We're not going to get into that. And then you have, again, as I mentioned, a match, which is the money coming from the company. So it's just an opportunity for you to invest in a retirement for your future through your workplace. Now, I know one of the questions is, well, what if I don't have a company or if my company doesn't offer it? There are other retirement vehicles that you can invest in, like an IRA, okay? The IRA maximum is $6,500. The 401k maximum, I think, going into 2023, $22,500. So that means you can put in $6,500 in an IRA, $22,500 in a 401k. All of that, as Ike said, is going to be invested, compounding interest, so it's just going to continue to grow as long as the market is going up. Mark, I'm sure you're going to talk about the market. I'm going to just steal a little bit of your thunder. You can't be afraid of the market when you're young. The market cycle is going to go up and down every 7 years or something like that, right? So that means it's going to be really high, then it's going to get really low. And when it's really low, that's when a lot of people freak out and start pulling money out. You can't do that, all right, especially when you're young. Ride that thing out for the cycles and just let your money continue to grow.
And I see some young kids. I see some young kids in here too. And Joe, do you have a custodial account for some of your kids?
Yeah, it's in emotion.
Oh, it's emotion. Good. Yeah, think about that too. Opening up your accounts for your young kids. Instead of me giving, I told my father not to buy my daughters any birthday gifts or Christmas gifts. I said, write them a check for however much you can, and I'm buying them stocks in their custodial account. They are 2 by the time they are 25. Hopefully that is like a $25,000 to $30,000 account for them. My daughters want to get married. They want to go to college. It is there. So please, parents, I see some young kids in here. Please look into that. It's something that you can call up. You could find out about it and kind of change the mindset of consumer spending into investing spending. I love that.
Look, so guys, I know time is running away from us. I want to spend just a little bit on, someone had a question? You got a question? Oh, all right, you just moved in. I just want to spend a little bit of time before we wrap this thing up on this concept of wealth protection. Here's the deal. 70% of African Americans don't have wills. In other words, we're dying, and we're providing no direction on where we want our items or assets to go to, and the government is making a decision. I guess, Mark, I'm going to ask you, man, how can our people specifically, or the young college kids or whomever, how can they better not just provide guidance on what to leave behind, but how do they better protect the assets that they have or the wealth that they're building?
Gotcha. So the question that you're asking is how to protect the wealth that we're bringing in, right? So the one thing we got to do is we have to have a will. Okay, a will is free, guys. We can get a will anywhere. It's free. It could be free and it could be up to $1,000, right? But the free template, guys, we all can get that. See, when we don't have a will, there's a saying that says, rich people leave a will, poor people leave bills, right? So we have to change that perspective. And again, we're just not privy. At the end of the day, it comes down to lack of knowledge, right? What a will is just protecting your assets and giving direction to what you want to do with the assets that you have. Do you want me to go into the life insurance part too? So and that's where the life insurance and things like that come into play, right? So you have to have the will in place because if you guys are going to have children, you're going to get married. See, the state of New Jersey especially, they don't know who's going to get your assets, right? And if you don't have a plan, they have a plan for you, right? And you don't want trust me, you don't want the state to be giving out people your money, your assets to people that you probably don't have a relationship with, right? So what a will does is give specific direction to what you want happening to your monies, your assets, and things of that nature. And then life insurance, right? So with your life insurance comes into play, guys, you got to make sure we have protection for that. How many of you guys know what life insurance is, by the way? Okay? See, most people in our communities, unfortunately, we think life insurance is burial insurance, right? It's something that we use to put people away. And it couldn't be more further from the truth. What life insurance is designed to do, guys, is protect our income. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay? So if you're making $50,000 a year, you would need about 8 to 10 times your income just to replace you financially, right? So think about this. There's another saying that if you ever go to a funeral and you see the widow, you don't know what she's really crying for, right? Is she crying because she lost her spouse or because she has to pay the mortgage by herself, right? She has to put the kids through school, right? She got to pay the car notes. She has to pay for these things. See, life insurance is not just about the burial. It's about replacing that income. And unfortunately, we're miseducated on that, right? Because nobody's talking to us about it. And this is why the panel's here. We're going to give you guys a game on that. Life insurance, you want to protect your income, guys. We are the most important asset in our household, right? We have all these things, our cell phone, we have insurance on that, right? We have insurance on our car, right? We have insurance on everything but our own lives, right? And we're the biggest assets. So we got to make sure whether we're 18 years old, and I speak to our guys that are 18, guys, get the information. Now, there's different policies out there. There's whole life insurance. Okay, how many of you guys ever heard of that? It's whole life insurance, right? There's universal life insurance, right? There's index universal life insurance. There's all these different type of policies. But from my personal experience, the only policy that you should have is term insurance, okay? Because that way you can afford the amount of insurance that your family actually needs, okay? That $500,000 of life insurance, if you're making $50,000 a year, for the average 30-year-old with a whole life insurance policy, that's going to cost you about $500 a month. Now, do you think the average person can afford $500 a month? No. Absolutely not. That's why we don't preach that, right? And then they have something called the cash value. We're not even going to get into that. That's just a ripoff within itself. You want to make sure you have a term policy and you invest that rest of that money, the difference. You put that into something like an IRA, right? You max out your 401k plans. And 30 years from now, guys, you'll have some money there where you have a policy and you have investments. Guess what? 30 years from now, if you have $1 million, don't you think you could bury yourself? You could bury yourself, right? You have $1 million, so what do you need the life insurance for? Right? You got to give yourself that time to build that asset, build those assets up, right? Now you may need some coverage just for, estate purposes and things like that, but you don't need the coverage to replace you.
Hey, Mark, I'm going to add to this. For this group, and not you over here, but the students. The younger you are, the less it is.
Absolutely.
All right? So, if you're like Mark said, if you're 21, 22, 23, a $500,000 term policy might be $20. But when you're 40, that same $500,000 is going to probably cost you about $100. All right? So the key thing is, if you can afford to get your insurance policy now, you should. Your parents will thank you. Your brothers and sisters will thank you, period.
No, thank you for that. And so, guys, I think it's the key takeaway here is when you leave this world, there should be clarity on where your assets are going. If there's anyone that you care about, that you love, you should have a will. Point blank, period. Especially if you have children. Like if you have children and you're not providing any clarity, that's selfish, to be honest with you. Because when you leave this world, you're going to leave people in not just in hurt and grief, but they're going to be trying to figure out. And look, I'm someone who's active in church. I can't tell you how many times I've helped and assisted with funerals where there was just nothing but chaos. I mean, lady was sick for years. We knew she was going to go, but everyone seemed clueless on what to happen. And so these are the conversations that we got to have more frequently. Time is getting us. I wish we could look. I can literally talk about this all day, but I want to make sure that I'm getting any questions that you guys, because this is really for y'all. And I want you guys to be comfortable. Are there any questions that you guys have specifically as it pertains to, hey, look, how do I build wealth, or you know, how do I fix this debt, or oh, how do I protect? Any questions that you guys might have? Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, yeah. I'm good. Yeah. But when you say I'm too old, just do what I'm doing. Yeah. So first off, Mitch, man, thanks for your transparency. The reality is, a lot of us don't get far. Y'all can clap for that, because we too scared to be real, and we just kind of like, breakthrough don't happen unless you're open and vulnerable. And so let me say this, man. First of all, you're right. Your income is not keeping up with inflation well. If it was 12 years ago, 100 grand and so forth. What I always tell people is understand your value in the marketplace, number one. I think, just so y'all know, a lot of us, specifically black women, leave money on the table all the time. You know why? We don't know how to negotiate our salaries. We're getting paid drastically lower than we're worth. And a lot of times it's because we don't understand our value in the marketplace. So first thing is, understand your value as a sales manager in the marketplace. You can get paid more. That's one. Number two, if you make six figures and you're African American, you're an elite in this country. That's good money, bro. The average millionaire doesn't make more than six figures. See, because we see on television, we assume the millionaires are the LeBron James, the Rick Rosses, the Hoves. I think it was the third best millionaire is a teacher. Make no money. It's not what you make, man. It's what you do with the money that you got. If you were making six figures back then and you were saving 20, 30% of your income in low index funds, you have a nest egg so big, you see what I'm saying? And so what my guidance and counsel, no, I'm with you. But here's the thing, Mitch, a lot of us didn't get the information early. What we were told was get a good job. That was it. And that's that's something to celebrate if you black making six figures at 26. But because no one told us what to do with the income, we're not building wealth. and we find ourselves in this rat race kind of going off. And so my counsel to you is, first thing is you did the right thing, right? Just be honest and vulnerable. Number two, know your worth, right? You can figure that out. Don't chase the money. I promise you, you're always going to want more. You're always going to want more, but you still know your worth. And if you can't handle the little that God's given you, he ain't going to give you more. And so the key thing is like, yo, when you make 100, you maximize that thing. Start building wealth, and you start seeing, it's like faithful over few. You start managing those small little things, it starts to compound, and you start seeing big things start to happen. And so, I mean, obviously, I'm here for you, but I think that's how you got to start thinking about it. How can I be a better steward with what I have, right? You do that, I think that'll kind of give you at least where you're trying, especially when you ain't got no responsibilities. Because I can tell you right now, being married with kids is a responsibility. Take advantage of that situation. Hope that helps.
So this is more of a question on behalf of my mother. So my mom is about 50K a year for a non-for-profit, but she had no 401K or any type of retirement plan. And I'm constantly telling her, like, Lizzie, you're more financially literate than I am. She's 50. But she says, what do I do? Like, can you ask the professors? What do I do to put money away for retirement? Start a bank account. Put money in an investment in a bank account that earns interest. Like, do you have any like tips for someone who has no plan whatsoever for their retirement plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question is, does her employer, the nonprofit, do they have a retirement plan? Okay. So remember earlier I mentioned, now we're talking about the individual IRA. So she can open an IRA at any custodian, TD Ameritrade, her local bank. And again, the maximum is $6,500, but she's 50, so she can actually put away, I think it's about $7,500 or so, all right? If she can afford to do that, do it systematically. There's 52 weeks in a year. Divide her pay, that $7,000, divided by the 52, and she just drops in money every time she gets paid. If it's weekly, if it's bi-weekly, it's 26, all right? The key thing is starting something. Open up the account, figure out how much she can put in and how often she can put that money in. Okay? That's gonna be the best course of action.
Let your mom know she's still young. Like, no, real talk, 50's young.
Yeah.
People live in the 90. That's 40 years. 40 years. Cool. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, what's your name? Isaac. That's a guilt mindset. You know, they're here feeling like they're getting a better life and making more money and want to take care of those that they left behind, right? So, and this is just my opinion, they have to see what's going on there versus what's going on here, okay? Do they plan on going back there later in life? And yeah, they're building something for themselves there, but what about the children, okay? Having a conversation in a family atmosphere, the children explaining what their goals are and how they can attain those goals and how the parents can help with those goals with the money that they're sending back to their home country, okay? If you have that conversation, and hopefully they'll see and understand, you know what, maybe I can divide 50% there, 50% here, so my children who are here can start to build their dream as well, okay? But again, it's the guilt mindset. A lot of immigrants do go through it, and it's understandable, but they have to overcome that.
And then you also have to be the voice of change too for the culture. You know, Joe has been really putting on for the culture, right? This is why he is doing this. This is why we're all here. So you can put it on for your culture too, and have them understand what it is. You know what I mean? Because I think that's how Joe started this couple years back of like, how can I change my group? How can I change the people around me? And that's really where we're going. These conversations were not had before the pandemic in the African American community, in the Black, Brown, Latino, Latinx communities, and they're being had now. So you could bring those to your community and your culture too. You should feel empowered coming out of here to do that.
And keep in mind, yo, your parents don't really owe us. Like, it's on you. I could talk to you specifically because I'm Kenyan too. The stuff that my parents saw growing up, yo, had it not been for their sacrifices, we wouldn't be here in this wonderful country or in this nice building. And so it's important that we build on their shoulders, and that's what we tried to land last night. And so, yeah, you're gonna be a change. There's a question back there. We got a principal right here. I'm sure he's teaching his kids this too.
The most valuable thing my father ever did for me before I went to school was to understand what tuition was. To understand that a state school has a lower tuition than a private school. So that would be one of the things that I would definitely look at. Like, please look at Rutgers University compared to, I don't know, what's the to Seton Hall, to Seton Hall, right? Seton Hall is probably $65,000 a year right now, compared to Rutgers, who might be up to about $30,000 a year right now. Like, that is the one thing I would say to do. That, thank God my father did that. I came out of college $25,000 in debt from East Stroudsburg instead of $90,000 in debt from the University of Scranton. So please take that one step to be like, hey, what's your tuition, and see the difference, and then understand how that can impact you later on.
I'm gonna add one more thing to that. Companies, all right? You're in high school now. Think about the companies that are paying tuition. Walmart, Target, all right? You can get a job at one of those companies. You're there for, I don't know how much time you need to be there, but if it's a year, you got that covered. And as long as they're gonna pay for it, take advantage of it, all right? I mean, again, we didn't know this. We're starting to figure this out now, that these companies are paying for school. Take it. You have a question?
All right. Is that any other questions? We good?
There's one
Oh,
more.
there's one? Yes.
Just like from a freshman college perspective, and I think a lot of my college colleagues here can agree with this, your grades are going to do so much for you financially. Like NJCU pays for my tuition because I have high tuition. So focus on your grades. Like, grades are everything, but some colleges will give you full rides just because you're smart. So like financially, your high school career and how you do can impact your financial status for college immensely. At least from like our perspective.
No, thank you. And NJCU is a very cost-effective college in comparison to some of these other private schools, so take advantage of it. Yes? All right, guys, I know we're way past time. Joe's going to kill me. It's supposed to be done at 7. Guys, I hope this was valuable. Can we just give a round of applause for the panelists? Guys, the key takeaway is this. We talked about this yesterday. Again, know your why. Be anchored on the motivation. And guys, consume the information. You should be always learning, how do I build wealth, not just for yourself, but your community and those around you. With that being said, thank you guys for attending our Financial Legacy Conference. We hope you enjoyed, appreciate it. take some cheese on the way out. We could chat for a little bit, but we do got to eventually vacate. Thank you so much.